Hi, this is Let's Talk Real Estate Seniors Corner, and my name is Darlene Dara from Right at Home Realty, and I'm your host today. Today we're going to focus in on snowbirds, whether or not it is taking care of their housing while they're away, or really mitigating some of the costs and really waste of costs when they're in the countries that they've chosen to hibernate, so to speak, primarily through the winter. Okay, so let's take a look at some of it. Okay, so the first thing is, what do you need to do on your home front before leaving, regardless of where you're going? And this podcast is really going to be focusing primarily into the US because most snowbirds are generally going down there, but they do go to the islands as well. So the first thing that you need to be looking at is property insurance. Now that will actually entail both your primary residence up in Canada, but also in the US. So let's talk first about your primary residence. In the fine print of a lot of policies, they talk about the fact that a house property has to be monitored, whether it's a condo or house in particular, because the elements and things can happen and people might not know. But in condos, you can do a lot of damage if you have a problem as well. So you really need to have somebody monitoring, and quite often it's every 2 or 3 days. Otherwise, any damage or any claim will be voided. So you really need to make sure that you're covered on the home front here. Well, as far as going to the south, depending, if you're not owning, it's a different thing, but if you are owning, you need to have proper property insurance, particularly in the States and other places. They have natural disasters that we're not really that familiar with on a regular basis as far as making claims. So make sure that you have the proper insurance to make sure that you're covered with all of that. So the other part is then money. It's about banking and currency and keeping your costs down. So one of the things that you want to be doing, besides taking some money in their currency, is, especially as a senior, you don't want to be walking around with wads of cash. So we tend to use, debit cards and particularly credit cards and things like that. So one of the things they do suggest is to have an American funds account by a Canadian provider, as well as a US credit card from a Canadian provider as well, because really you don't want to be getting dinged all the time with making, buying in American, it being converted back to Canadian, and then you've got, all the other charges on top of it. So you really want it to be a straight, the conversion's already there. So definitely take a look at that. So you want currency, and you want the banking, and you want credit cards and things like that, really in, US funds as well. So then we get into healthcare. So, as a Canadian, we do have healthcare. We hear all the time in the media about the problems, particularly with the U.S. Healthcare system. So you don't want to get stuck. OHIP will cover between roughly $200 and $400 a day, as an example, if you end up hospitalized. But an average U.S. hospital can run, an average $1,000 a month or a day. And that's not including any of your, if you had to have surgery or anything else. So you need to, again, make sure that you have proper coverage for the time period that you're going to be away as well. So the other thing is, if you, on the medical side, if you have prescriptions, you need to have, enough of them that your prescriptions are filled, because it's not like you can just go out and run over to Walgreens and get your prescription filled. So it's really important that all your health care needs are addressed and you're properly insured as well. You need travel insurance, especially if you're flying, in case something gets canceled or a cruise line gets canceled, as well as unexpected medical emergencies as well. So definitely look into your travel insurance. Another insurance that, if you are driving and you're particularly taking your own vehicle, make sure that sometimes there's a premium or a limit on the amount of time that your vehicle can be driven outside of Canada. You need to definitely address your automobile insurance. And also, it is recommended that you increase your coverage to about $2 million, because often the American claims can be very high, so you want to be properly protected. The other thing is tax implications. You have to be very careful. You cannot spend more than 4 months in a country consistently over 3 years. And it's not just, you have to calculate it in a certain way. And the US calls it the substantial presence test. And the best way of calculating it, if you'll be taxed, is to add the days you spend in the US in your latest year to a third of the number of days you spent there the year before, and a sixth of the days you spent there the year before that. If that totals beyond the 4 months, then you're a total of 183, they say, then you're going to have to be prepared to be paying some tax as well. So you really have to be, careful of that. As well, if you own U.S. properties, you'll have to file a return on the net income if you're actually renting it out to anyone else. And the taxes you pay in the U.S. have to also be noted when you file your Canadian taxes. So again, there is implications on both sides as well. Now, another thing that we haven't had to worry about in the past, but we're really having to worry about now, is some of the utilities that we use, such as your phone, internet, cable, things like that. Very few of us go anywhere, quite frankly, without our cell phones, and you really want to make sure that you have a plan that is going to keep all of these costs at a minimum. And your other ones, if they're, if you're using one or you want to park the one that you're using up here, and be it on vacation mode and have sort of a flat maintenance fee, you might want to look at that again. So you really need to be looking at the different options of having, providers down there or plans, because again, when I go to the US, but again, I'm only going, for a week or two, or I'm not going months at a time. I'm with Rogers, so it's like $5 a day, and it's basically like I'm home. But that's not going to cover me for 4 months. So you really have to, again, look and be educated to reduce your costs, because some of this stuff can really add up as well. So I hope that has helped. The information will also be provided in our newsletter. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow.